everybody who prayed for me, all of those who believed in me. God, you keep doing the impossible. I thank you. Yeah, my vision always been bigger than the bigger
The
picture.
Genesis
The
Project.
question is who's in it with you. When you're losing, everybody switch you. When you're winning, everybody with you. I don't understand how you can count your problems and not your blessings.
Carlton, yo.
Welcome, everybody. This is your guy, CY. Welcome to episode number 2 of the Genesis podcast. And I am super excited today because I got somebody that I consider to be a brother. I consider to be a friend. I consider to be an ally. I consider to be an accountability partner. I consider somebody that I can bounce ideas off and he will tell me the truth, whether I want to hear it or not. And he's what I call a part of my board of directors. He is actually like a consultant on my board of directors, none other than the corporate dropout himself, Mr. R. Robert Johnson, who is this amazing man. How are you doing, RJ? I want you to go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Thank you first of all for being a guest on the Genesis podcast. I know we've talked about collaborating on a lot of different occasions, and things always align perfectly. So the alignment came. We are collaborating, and we're just glad to have you. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Introduce yourself to the people, RJ.
Yeah, absolutely, man. First, thank you so much, CY. I appreciate and glad to have the opportunity to sit and talk with you and have a conversation. I'm so proud of you, man. The work that you're doing to not just build a better life, but to build a kingdom. So I appreciate the opportunity. A little bit about me, right? We've known each other now over 10 years at this point.
Yep.
But the
Crazy.
foundation of our friendship, right? It's crazy. But the foundation of our friendship was that we both had a unique yet similar perspective about life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Our faith is foundational to everything that we do, and we take that everywhere that we go, and we're not compromising on that. And
Mm-hmm.
you know that for me is always refreshing to meet men like that, because a lot of us talk a good game, but we don't always walk it out, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so a little bit about me. I'm just a humble, black boy from Miami, Florida, who was the
Dade
first
County.
in Dade County, 305, Carroll City, to be very specific. And I just grew up in an environment where I didn't have a lot of, my mother was the most positive example, right? Like my mother, my grandmother, and our nucleus. But Miami, when I grew up in Miami in the 80s and the 90s, it was probably not as bad as it is today, but it was a different type of experience back in the day. Actually, drugs were even more pervasive. Crime was
Cocaine Cowboys, Miami, right?
Cowboys, Griselda, right? Griselda, Blanco.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately, my mom did a wonderful job of protecting, me at the time as an only child from a lot of that, shielding me as
Mm-hmm.
great Black mamas do, right? They are ferocious, protective beings over their children. And so I grew up enveloped in love. Like I never did not feel loved.
Right.
And so I was able to take that feeling, because I think love creates confidence. When you know that you are loved, like God loves us, which I wish
Right.
more people leaned into the confidence that having a God that loves you
Uh-huh.
brings. But I leverage that confidence of how I grew up, not as an excuse to not become something, but as fuel and motivation to be exponentially better, right?
Right.
And so I took that momentum, that drive, that resilience, as I said, first person in my family to go to college, get into corporate America, start my own business, and do all the things that I'm fortunate and privileged to do, past, present, and will do in the future. And I know we'll get into some more specific things throughout our conversation.
Well, that is amazing. I am glad to hear your story. I mean, I already know the story, but somebody need to hear that in that same area where you grew up, how you grew up, understanding that I can make it out of this situation if I choose to, right? And that's a perfect segue into what we're talking about today, right? So our conversation is going to be around navigating choices, inputs, equal outputs,
Mhm.
and personally and spiritually and corporately and entrepreneurially. So we're going to cover the gamut of choices, how they look, how you make the correct choices. And we're going to try to give the audience some practical tools to further make better choices, to get their life, to envision what they see in their head
Mhm.
and they've written down in their goals, their dreams, and their aspirations, or they have in their notes. We want to help you navigate those choices to get to that space where your life looks like you know it should, right? And it takes choices to get to those spaces.
That's right.
And if you don't make the right choices, you're gonna get the wrong outputs. But if you make the correct choices, you will get the positive outputs, the outputs that you desire. So, as I said, we're talking about navigating choices, inputs equal outputs. So for you, RJ, can you explain to me what is the context of your choices in regards to personal, spiritual growth and development, entrepreneurially, and just holistically in life? How do you go about making your decisions? What do you base your decisions on? And how are you mindful of what you consume and the things you do
Mm.
impact the choices that you make?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I love the topic of choices because at the end of the day, we all have choices that we're consciously or unconsciously making. At the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day, our choices can just be a series of patterns that happen because we get up in the morning and we begin to follow a pattern,
Right.
right? For me, I never had the luxury post high school of having a pattern, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I knew once I got out of high school that and started college, thank God, that I was going on. I was meant for a different path. First and
Right.
foremost, now let's just get into it. First, you got to know that your life is called for something bigger and better than where you come from
Right.
and where you are.
Come on.
Sometimes we settle for where we are because it's a little bit better. It's an inch
Mm-hmm.
farther. It's a foot farther. But maybe God called you to go the mile or to
Right.
go to the different, to the next state or to go to the
Uh-huh.
next country, right?
Right.
And so often people accept a pattern, which is habits and
Mm-hmm.
routine, instead of creating an amazing, adventurous, faith-filled life.
Mm-hmm.
That for me, you say, what informs my decisions? What's the context of those decisions? And, how do I know I'm making the best decision? It's
Uh-huh.
when I say, God, listen, I yield to you. I put your purpose and intention behind this decision, in front of this decision, so that
Mm-hmm.
I will make the best decision. I promise you, I was thinking about this earlier. Because I was watching something, because I consume, also talked about consumption. I consume information.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I watch, it's probably 80-20 for me. 80% of what I consume is
Right.
knowledge that's going to help me be a better person, help me
Mm-hmm.
be a better leader, help me be a better entrepreneur, help me be a good steward of my faith, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was watching something that just, and this conversation frustrates me sometimes because people think that choices are general. All of
Right.
us have different choices that we have to make. And I don't like the statement, you have the same 24 hours that I have. The
Right.
reality is, Carlton, we have the same in man-made construct of time, but we have them different in our God-given purpose and responsibilities of time. You're a parent. I'm not a parent, right? You're married. I'm not yet married,
Right.
right? We have in common that we are building and growing a business that is impactful in the lives of people, right?
Right.
And giving God the glory. But
Mm-hmm.
those circumstances require us to look at our choices differently.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
That's the truth.
So it is. I mean, it's sometimes it's easy to say because I did it, Carlton should be able to do it, or
Mm-hmm.
because Carlton did it, somebody else could be able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
What we have the beautiful privilege of being able to do, and you said at the top of this call, is being a mere example,
Mm-hmm.
right? For somebody.
Right.
We get to
Right.
represent what's possible for another young Black man. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Another brother in the military, like when you were 20 years old in the military and you found yourself in a life or death situation. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Uh-huh.
Or someone like Robert, who grew up with a single parent, his dad didn't play a big part in his life until the last 5 years of his life. Although in his absence, that was actually playing a part. And so I don't want to take it, into too many different directions, but I make my decisions based off of my faith. I don't make decisions off of feeling
Mm-hmm.
because feelings are momentary temporary experiences. And I sometimes am ruminating on something that is making me feel sad or making
Mm-hmm.
me feel whatever the emotion is, versus, okay, I allow myself to have the feeling, but
Mm-hmm.
then I'm going to make my decisions based on fact.
That's right. That's
That
right.
makes sense?
Uh-huh. No, that's spot on, right? And so what I would like to just add to that from my perspective, one, let's talk about choices. Choices involve weighing decisions and the outcome of said decision, right? And your choices should be made on, and I love how you said that, the context. Your context in life is different from my context, even though we're both black men in our 40s and in late 40s, early 50s, been in the C-level executives in the world. We're striving down this path, but we have different contexts,
Right,
even in our present life today. So the context of my choices are based on the responsibilities that I have
right,
as a husband, as a father, as a man of the kingdom, as a business owner, etc. Yours, you have a relationship, you have your business, you have no children. So you base your choices on the outcome you want in your present situation.
right.
And one thing I've learned, and I wish I would have known this at a much, much, much earlier age, right?
Mhm.
One, choices have consequences.
Yeah,
If you don't make a choice, there's a consequence.
exactly.
If you make a choice, there's a consequence. So there's actually like three consequences to the to your choice, right?
Yeah,
There's a good consequence,
yeah,
there's a bad consequence, and there's an in between.
that's right.
It's just kind of a gray area. So when you don't make a decision, you're in the gray area. You're just in no man's land.
Yeah,
You make the wrong decision, you get the wrong output. You make
yeah,
the right decision, you eventually get the right output. And the beautiful thing about either one of those things that we do, we're talking about sowing and reaping as well
yeah,
with choices.
yeah.
So you're going to reap abundantly more than you sow. So your choice is going to reap you abundantly more than you sow. Like when I got shot, the
Hmm.
choice that I made to be in the wrong place at the wrong time around the wrong things
Hmm. Hmm.
got me in a situation where I found myself within an inch of my life, so to speak. So choices have contents. Your decision should be made based off the available options and where
Yeah,
you desire to be in
yeah.
5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And then you take that and you reverse engineer your choices off of where you desire to be.
I align with that 100%, and I learned that later in life. I'll be honest. I think my perspective, obviously, our perspective evolves the
Yes.
bigger experience, exposure, and education that we get in life, right? So the
Right.
more we see and do, the bigger our picture becomes. Um, I think one of the things that's been a blessing for me in terms of choices, uh, before I learned even more about reverse engineering the
Mm-hmm.
choice, was where I am, wherever I was at post high school,
Mm-hmm.
was better than where I come from. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Yep.
And so, as long as I was making a decision that is informed by, I know I don't want to go back there.
Right. Right.
I know this decision will potentially lead me back there. So let me make the alternative decision, which has led me to where I am, right?
Yep. Yep. That's
Our
it.
decisions are informed by our lived experiences and our perceptions of our lived experiences, right?
Mm-hmm.
I tell people all the time, I'm grateful that when I was 22 or 32, that I didn't have this big goal to be, oh, I want to be the president of this, or I want to be a millionaire, or I want to be that, or
Uh-huh.
another, because everything that came then was a beautiful blessing. So when you're making your decisions with your set of choices, ensure that you're making a decision from an informed perspective and experience, and not just what you see on social media or what you see somebody else's marriage or what you see somebody else's job looking like. And so much of anxiety and depression is caused by making a decision with someone else's context,
Mm-hmm.
not your own lived experience. And so you're never going to fit into a mold that was, I can't fit into Carlton Young's mold.
No,
Do you know
no.
what I mean? That's a
And I can't
big,
do RJ.
That's the biggest, best mold God ever made was Carlton Young. And
Uh-huh.
guess what? Robert H. Johnson Jr. is the biggest and best Robert H. Johnson Jr. mold that God could make me to fit in. And so one of the lessons I encourage people, especially, Gen Zs and millennials, I'm an X, is when you release the influence of others on your decisions, you will make healthier choices. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, most definitely. And it's funny, like this is crazy how aligned you are. You were just segueing into the next question, the next topic of discussion based around, choices. And so that question was actually, and you've kind of answered it, is how does the media, relationships, and things that you see around you, even the environment you grew up, shape your mindset and the decisions and the behavior that you have, right? And then let's, kind of maybe break into how do we discern a strategy that keeps us falling victim to the social media, malarkey is what I call it, jumping into that cesspool of looking good, but being dirty on inside. And I use the analogy of I wouldn't go to a black tie event with clothes I had on last week and I haven't shaved and I haven't cleaned up. But that's how social media is, right? You get the best presentation of somebody, but you don't know the backstory. So
Yeah.
how do we as a culture, when everybody is going to always put their best foot forward, they're never going to show you the failures. They're
Wow.
never going to show you when they had to change course. They had to close the business down, or they lost their job, or their account was negative. They don't talk about that. They talk about their wins. So
Yeah.
how in a society that's filled with wins and people base their decisions on other people's wins, how do we stop making choices and decisions off of that?
Yeah. The first thing is that you have to be willing to recognize that I'm making decisions based off of something someone else thinks, something I saw versus what God gave me.
Mm-hmm.
The best way to get out of the malarkey of making social media based decisions is to recognize what you said. People only show their best foot forward, right? On social media. You don't see President Barack Obama posting pictures of him shaving, for example, right?
Right.
You don't see Beyonce showing pictures of her carrying one of her children, preparing a meal for them.
Right.
People pick and choose what they show to the world, and you have to remember you have the absolute responsibility to do the same.
Mm.
Your life is not for public consumption. Social media,
Right.
I thank God it was not around when I grew up, because who knows where I would be,
Right.
right?
Right.
I mean, I grew up in the 90s. We were busy outside playing street ball. We were busy playing ball on the court. We were busy outside.
Mm-hmm.
And now everybody said, we outside. You know what I'm saying? We outside. Well, I grew up outside. So
Right.
where
Outside.
I am in my
Outside.
life, I like being inside. I
Right.
like enjoying my space. And so um, when people get to the honest truth of the truth about who they are,
Mm-hmm.
that's when you can start to make decisions about, and from a place of grounded, honest, spiritual, real, and practical, right? Practicality, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was watching something again today, and there was a group of people talking about contracting, because
Mm-hmm.
government contracting is something that I'm doing a lot of research around. That's going to be another vertical of my business.
Right.
And what was disappointing, but I know the decision was made from that person's lived experience, is, and this is a little different direction maybe, but it's about choices.
Right.
I don't think we do a good enough job in the kingdom, let alone as Black people in the kingdom, being transparent
Mm-hmm.
with information.
Yeah.
This specifically is around money.
Mm-hmm.
One of the reasons we have a wealth gap is because we don't talk about wealth in the pennies and cents perspective. We're only talking about wealth from the thousands, millions of dollars perspective. And again, this is a little bit different thinking.
No, go
For
with it.
me, I make a choice to give people information. I
Right.
make a choice if I'm better because of what I experienced, you should be that much better quicker because I'm going to give you the game. I'm going to be
Exactly.
honest about, my faith and how important it is in my decision making. I'm going to be honest about the fact that, guess what? That wasn't always the case. I've made some mistakes and some bad decisions that, they weren't losses, they were lessons, but your decisions only get better when you use the lessons to inform your next decision, right?
Right.
And so for me, one of the things, this is just a personal pet peeve, but that I'm really working, and we have a great relationship, so we don't do this with each other. But I think one of the things that holds people back, even when it comes to being able to make the right choice, is I don't even have enough information. My
Mm-hmm.
mother didn't have a 401k. My father
Right.
didn't have a 401k. My mama didn't have $10,000. My dad didn't have $10,000. So what am I supposed to do with this money other than live it up and be outside?
Hey, that's a good question, but again, that's part of choices. And I think the choices that you made at this junction in your life is finding the information. I tell people now there is no excuse for not being able to understand something because there is so much information out there. Now, you may have to dig through and search and discern which is the correct application of the information for you,
Yeah.
but there is knowledge out there. So what good is knowledge without application? Knowledge without application is just data. Knowledge and application is wisdom. And that's what the Bible talks about. You have to apply the knowledge that you get. So the
Yeah.
choices that we make, and I was talking about this with my buddy yesterday on our podcast, the Elevated Mindset podcast. Shout out to my boy Kevon Empowered. And we're talking about Exodus, right? So
Mhm.
exits going coincide with choices.
Yeah.
And what choices have you made that have extended your time in the wilderness?
Oof.
The children of Israel were only supposed to be, that's a 12-day journey. It took them 40 years. And I look at my life, right, and I say, what choices have I made based on looking at what somebody else is doing, looking at social media, thinking, okay, this is a way for me to move and get, make money really quickly, get what I desire in a way that is just what I desire quicker.
Mhm.
But you can't do that because one thing that you spoke on earlier, it says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks.
Yeah.
So when evil resides in the heart, it's exposed by the way that we move. The things that we covet will amplify in the things that we do. So if we covet money, the choices that we make are going to be driven by money,
That's right.
right? If we covet prestige or title, we're going to do things to be seen.
Yeah.
And as you get older and you understand that those choices are not the best choices for you because it's not the genuine, authentic version of who I'm supposed to be,
Yeah.
it never works out for me.
Right. Right.
So, looking at what other people are doing, what other people are going, or me to say, I'm going to jump into DE&I because
Mhm.
RJ's in it and I know I can
Right.
make some money and do it. That is not my lane. That is not my gift. That is not my calling. There might be some bleed over in DE&I where I can talk about, certain topics, but my choice should be to be authentic to who I am. So what I want people to understand when you're looking at social media, when you're looking at TV, when you're looking at what somebody's driving, make a choice that's authentic to you, authentic to your bank balance,
Mhm.
authentic to your level of expertise, and that's authentic to who God wants you to be. Those
Listen.
are the way that you make sound choices in life. And if you can learn the lesson quicker than I learned it, because I've made bad decisions. Even in my 50s, I've made bad decisions. And I'm not ashamed of them
Yeah.
because my pain is your purpose to
Mhm.
keep you out of that ditch, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So go ahead. I'm
You
sorry.
know what I
Go
would
ahead.
say though is there are some bad decisions, right? There's some
Mhm.
really bad decisions. I do think for the most part, decisions, removing the judgment, right or wrong, good or bad,
Mhm.
will get us to a certain path. And sometimes even the bad decision was meant to teach us a lesson that we hadn't yet learned. I firmly believe life is a series of lessons that we're meant to learn, and we matriculate through life, not just go through life. Life is a series of lessons. And guess what? Just like quantitative methods in college that I took 2 times, until I got it, or until I was put in a position where someone saw that's not Robert's strength. Let's figure out a way to position this with him so he can actually absorb the information, right? So sometimes we make the same mistake, not because we're consciously choosing it, but we haven't developed the muscle, the knowledge, the understanding, or have been taught, right? Taught how to do that thing. And so we make decisions. This is better than what my mama did. This is better than what my daddy did. Or it's the same thing. My daddy did this, and look at him. He was good. Is he good though?
Right.
And should you be that much better?
Right. No, I agree. And this is a great discussion. Hopefully somebody is listening to something on this podcast that is resonating with them. And if you're listening to it on YouTube and you can comment, or you're listening to it, or come to my page, RJ's page, we'll give you that information later, and comment about a choice that you've made that's either freed you or kept you bound, right? We want to hear from you. So we want to move on to, right. And now we want to talk about how to make better choices and how they align with the purpose that you have in your life. So for instance, let's talk about, practices on making better choices, right? The things that you do to feed your mind to make them positive choices. Like you were talking about how you listen to things that elevate your mind and give you a more positive outlook about life, right? And how you don't allow yourself to sit back and just watch mind-numbing TV when you could, right? Or when you could Netflix and chill. That's a choice. A lot of us are Netflix and chilling, and our life is in disarray. And then we're wondering why our life is in disarray, and we're praying to God for an out or an option to make our life better. And he's giving you the option, and you haven't taken the option.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. How do you navigate that choice when it's like comfort over what needs to be done, like comfort versus uncomfort?
It's a good question. My therapist recently told me, she said, it's okay to do nothing, but you want to make the decision to do nothing. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, having nothing to do is different than making the decision to do nothing. Right. And so sometimes we need to make the decision to do nothing because we're in a wilderness period, or we're in a season where I need God to be very clear with me on what my next steps are. I don't want to move because I'm not confident yet on what that move should look like. So there are times when we should remain still so that we can get clear, right? And so I say that because that's one of the things that I've learned and adopted as an adult, as a 40-plus-year-old man who has made decisions that I thought were good, but they turned out to not be the best decision, or I thought were bad, but turned out to be the best thing for me, right?
Right.
But what I choose to put in front of my decision again is, God, I trust you. God, I know you are the author and the finisher, and it is my job to walk out the pages that you've written for my life. And a lot of times we sit and we wait instead of picking up. So you said, a book, a magazine, like, speaking of home, there's a magazine there's a paper called the Miami Times. I get this because my grandmother, who passed away last year, she was a big reader. I picked up reading from her. When you read, you can make more informed choices. Reading is the foundation of strong leadership, because you learn about others, which means you also can learn about yourself. You learn about the world, so you have exposure to different thoughts and perspectives and information, and you can decide, is that something that's applicable to me, or is it just something that I can store? You know how some people have, like, how did you know that? They have so much information stored up here. It's because they're a consumer of information. And when we're a consumer of information and consumer of investing in quality conversations, that's also helping us to make informed decisions. Let me give you a great example. So when I was in banking, right? I
Mm-hmm.
started out as a branch manager, and then I got my first branch. I had no clue what I was doing outside of the training that they gave me, right? Because it's my first
Mm-hmm.
time into consumer banking. But when I tell you that was the best experience because I got to sit in front of people who had $100 in their account or $10 million in their account. And I
Mm-hmm.
got to glean lessons from both of those people.
Right.
So wherever you sit today, ma'am or sir, don't forsake the power of having conversations with the client, the customer, the peer next to you or in front of you, because they just may give you a drop a dime that's going to make you $1. I wouldn't be where I am business wise, let alone financially, if I wasn't curious. And I was in a position, right? As a branch manager, I get to say, hey, let's come and sit down and talk about your account.
Right.
But you can be at Starbucks and have a conversation with the barista about, how much they enjoy working here and what it is about working here and what is your ultimate goal. That's me. I'm the conversation. So
Right.
I spend a lot of my time listening to audiobooks, watching YouTube, love Chat GPT as a reservoir and a tool and source of information. But some of the biggest value I've gleaned in my life was from coaching and mentors. If you really want to start making better decisions, find you a virtual or real time mentor. And I say virtual or real time because guess what? I didn't have a mentor in 10th grade or,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, but I saw people on television or in sports that I had admired and
Right.
aspired. You got to see somebody that you admire so that you can become the person you aspire or
Mm-hmm.
even dream that you want to be that person. And I promise you, if you consume information, watch less quote unquote TV. Nothing wrong with entertainment because you need that to
Right.
sometimes just unwind, right?
Mm-hmm.
But spend more time consuming information than consuming items from Amazon or consuming scripted television or consuming reality TV and then bringing it back home. Know your word. Find you a principle in the Bible. I think we talked about this,
Right.
right? For me, Jeremiah 29:11 is just is one of my scriptures. Psalm
Mm-hmm.
23, the Lord is my shepherd, right?
Right.
That one does so much and will
Mm-hmm.
help inform your decisions.
That's amazing, and I definitely appreciate your response and your vantage point on making better decisions, informed decision. One is great because you're being intentional, right? Intentionality. They say where energy goes, energy flows.
Yeah.
The two is people perish for the lack of knowledge. That's what the Bible says. And that's applicable in your walk in the kingdom, and it's applicable in life. If you don't know something, you cannot make the informed decision, right? So you have to find a way to make a better decision, right? And like you said, um, college education will make you a formal living.
Mm-hmm.
Self-education, personal development will make you wealthy.
Yeah.
And that is really true because if you even look at the statistics, it's proven that more people that did not go to college have become millionaires and billionaires
Mm-hmm.
versus people that have went to college. And I'm not saying don't go to college,
Right.
but even if you go to college, you should be able to add to that foundation so that, like you said, get up every day, watch videos about something that interests you outside of mindless entertainment,
Yeah.
right? Two is get you a circle of people. Like
Yeah.
if all y'all been around each other for 10 years and everybody's at the same level, that ain't a circle that you should be in, right? You
Yeah.
really need to have some you call it some say role model. I call it I call it a goal model.
Goal model. I love it.
So they're where you want to be. They're part of
Yes.
your goals in life.
Yeah.
So you don't model yourself after them, but you model some of the behaviors, right? Like my mom told me, she said, baby, you take some of the things that work in the house that me and your dad did.
Mm-hmm.
And if they work for you, you apply them.
Yeah.
The things that don't work, you throw them to the side. So
Yeah.
in life, when the people that you see that are doing things that you desire to do,
Yeah.
you pay attention to them and you take information, you glean information from them that you can use, and that are genuine and authentic to you.
Yeah.
Because I cannot replicate your gift, right? I can glean some stuff from you and learn some things about the way that you move about in your daily, but I can't mimic you because that's not who God designed me to be in life. He's designed me to be authentically CY.
Yeah.
And see, God can't bless who I post to be.
Right.
He blesses who I'm supposed to be.
POST.
And so I'll say that again. God cannot bless who I post, POST, to be. He can only bless who I'm supposed to, SUPPOSED, supposed to be. So, keep that in mind as you're moving forward. And some of the things that I think, that you can do to ultimately become a better person, right, is look at things above the line. I say above the line, below the line.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't anything in life. Above the line is anything that adds value to what you're trying to do, where you're trying to go. Below the line is just status quo,
Yeah.
or it doesn't serve you well. It just keeps you afloat.
Yeah.
So look at your life and ask yourself, what's above the line that can add value to me on a daily basis,
Yeah.
right? And we talk about these principles, and the book's coming soon. And we talk about those principles of being fruitful, of multiplying, of subduing, and having dominion, and being prolific, amplifying, transcending, and leading, vice versa. But those are like things that I try to do on a daily basis, right? So you focus on that and focus being on efficient and effective.
Yeah. Yeah.
And more so, quit looking at the outcome. Focus on the process.
That's huge.
Master the process, right? And if you master the process, you'll get those exponential increases that only God can do.
Yeah.
What we talk about, if you be faithful over few things, I'll make you ruler over many.
Yeah.
And then oftentimes people forget the last part of that verse where he says, now come and enjoy the master's good pleasure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he's telling you, if you do these little bitty things, like my mama used to say, it's the little foxes that spoil the vine.
Yeah.
It's not the big things that get you. It's the little things that you don't do. You don't leave undone, right? If you don't, pay the toll bill when you get the first notice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then you get another notice and they've tacked a charge on it.
Right.
And so interest compounds negatively or positively.
Facts.
How are you compounding your interest? Like what are we doing to give God a return on the investment in our life?
Mm.
Are we allowing people to short our stocks, or are we shorting our own stock?
Yeah.
And if you really think about that, think about when GameStop was out and how they betted billions of dollars that GameStop was gonna fail, and they tried to short the stock. And how the people got together and they were intentional about what they were doing on a daily basis, and they blew that stock up, and there were a lot of people made a lot of money
very quickly.
Right. But they were intentional about it.
Yeah.
So, I bring that back to life metaphorically. And are you intentional about what you're doing to increase your stock in life? Right.
Yeah.
It's the talents, right?
Mm-hmm.
When he buried the one talent, and when he came back and he told the task, I know you're a hard taskmaster. I didn't want to lose your money, so I buried this talent. Here's your one talent back.
Yeah.
You remember what the response was?
Yeah.
You fool.
Yeah. Yeah. I gave you something and you did nothing with it.
Right.
Nothing.
That's what a lot of us are doing. That's what I've done.
Yeah.
God gave me something. He's gave you something. You are watching this podcast. You are that are listening in this audience.
Mm.
The difference between RJ and a lot of people is he did something what was given to him.
And on top of that, I didn't even recognize what God had given me.
Right.
I was doing so until I slowed down and recognized.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I was a manager at Sam's Club back in the day. I was
You've done a lot of things.
Man, I've done a lot of things. But
Sam's Club, bank manager.
Sam's Club, Bank of America, this bank, that company. Man, and I tell you, like, the experiences I've had, but I count it all joy because they've been nothing but fruitful in my life. Experiences make you more valuable.
Yeah, you shaped your life.
In one lane, You think staying in one lane? How many like everyone needs a diversified portfolio, right? Like that applies to your life. Your life should not look the same in every area, mediocre. It should be excelling in some areas, growing in some areas. And guess what? Average in some cases is better than below average. If you a father and you come home every day and you spending a few minutes with your family and you spending a few minutes with your partner and y'all are investing in good communication, some people would say that's average, but guess what? That's actually above average. And so
Right.
I remember when I was working, I would have to sign checks, right? To give the vendors when they were delivering merchandise. And it got me in the habit of practicing signing my signature because it made me realize one day you're going to be signing checks for
Come on.
yourself. You understand what I'm saying? For others, paying others for yourself. So God will put you in the least, or let's say the least comfortable position that you can get the most revelation of who he's called you to be. Those small spaces, sometimes they are spaces of protection. Sometimes they are spaces of development. Sometimes they are spaces to make you frustrated enough to make a better decision. Sometimes you won't make a better decision until you are frustrated enough to make a better decision. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
I was frustrated.
That's key.
Yeah, I got frustrated after a certain point in that job and I flipped it. I said, all right, I'm doing this. I'm going to start dressing like at that time for me, what it meant to show up different.
Right.
If you want something, you can't go to work in a McDonald's, uniform. And I worked at McDonald's trust me, in my grade school years, I worked at McDonald's. I love it. I'm grateful for it. But at a certain point, you got to make a decision to put on a different uniform. You got to make a decision to wear something different so God can deliver you to the place that he has destined for you. But you can't wear your McDonald's uniform into the CEO suite. When are you going to take that off? You are capable of more, not better. You are capable of more.
Well, you know that's Romans 12:2. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind.
And it's a daily work. It is a daily process. Again, I want to be very clear. I worked at McDonald's. It inspired me to know I didn't want to stay there.
Right.
But it's okay if you want to be the general manager. It's okay if you want to be the manager. Whatever your decision is, I'm not judging it. But if you know that you have a calling, which all of us have a big calling on our life, you can choose to walk in it or you can choose to just talk about it. A lot of people talk about their big calling. A lot of people talk about what they're going to do. That's another lesson around decisions is make your decision in silence. Be wise as a serpent, gentle as a dove. Make your decisions in confidence, in collaboration with God. He will make your name great. When I tell you some of the things I've been exposed to and afforded to do in my career because I just made a decision. I didn't boast about. As soon as I recognized the difference between ego, right, and actual spirituality, because there's a lot of spiritual egos, right?
That's a whole nother show right there, right?
Whole nother show, but it leads to some people making decisions that are ill-informed or misinformed. But when I know me, then I can make decisions that are aligned. Once the best relationship you have to get in order to make great decisions is your vertical relationship with God. You get this vertical right, the horizontal becomes that much easier to facilitate, simpler. I won't say easy, simple, right? But our choices are a reflection of what we think of ourselves, what we think about others, who's hurt us, who we've released from hurt, who we've forgiven, who we need to forgive is so deep. We need to do something on trauma-informed decisions because there's trauma-informed leadership, right? We've all experienced trauma, but we need to really look at the impact trauma has on the decisions that we make.
Well, look, man, you actually just, brought yourself back for another podcast. And so we will be talking about that trauma-informed decisions, right? But I love what you said, right? And I think that you touched on it, and I just want to kind of add a little bit of layers to it. The very first decision that we all have to make is that we are good enough.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to end like we started.
That's right.
You may have been born this way, but you don't have to die that way. When you understand that the decisions that you will die looking like the decisions that you make or don't make, you begin to make different decisions, right? And so understanding and just like looking yourself in the mirror, and like I'm looking at myself on this podcast right now, and I know I need to shave a little bit better. I need to line up. It's almost time for me to get a haircut. So I know I'm not my best, right? But when we understand and we look in the mirror and we look internal,
Yeah.
and we understand that, I need a haircut, I need to edge up. I'm a little dirty on the inside. My heart is not where it needs to be. I'm holding on to past trauma, right? I'm holding on to these things that were meant to destroy me, and I'm allowing it to destroy me. I'm allowing it to weigh me down. It's like a plane. A plane cannot take off if it has too much baggage on it.
That's right.
And if it does try to take off, it's going to take it longer to taxi, to get the maximum speed to elevate. When it starts on the climb up, the climb is going to be longer, and there's a possibility that the plane could crash. You could damage the plane on the taxi up, or you can damage the plane when it lands with too much weight if it makes it through the flight.
Right.
But even when it gets up off the ground, if it's too much baggage, it cannot fly at its maximum intended altitude.
Right.
So a flight might be supposed to be at 35,000 feet, but since it has too much baggage, it maybe can only get to 28 or 29,000 feet. Imagine what that 6,000 feet looks like in your life, because you're flying at 25,000 to 29,000 feet, but you were intended to fly at 35,000.
Yeah.
But you're bogged down with the decisions and past decisions that you've made that we can't change. We can only move forward. So I challenge our listeners today, as we're talking about inputs and outputs, right? What you put in is what you get out. Good, bad, indifferent. Make a concerted effort starting today that I am going to change the way that I move about. When you understand that God blew his breath in our nostril, and that's actually circulating in our system today.
Yeah.
Every time you inhale and exhale, you say Yahweh. You are praising him every time you inhale and exhale, because that is his breath inside of you. So if he's the God of excellence, make a choice to be excellent today. It's all up to you.
What I appreciate about what you said is that it stands on. You know what my problem is? What people would say my problem is? Some people, not all people. My problem is I actually believe that God created me in his image. God said, let us make man in our image. He talked to Jesus and the Holy Spirit, and they decided that I was worth it.
Yep.
And when you realize that God made a decision to create you and you're worthy, regardless of the decision you made yesterday or 5 years ago or 10 years ago, you walk different, you talk different, you make different decisions. You move about the cabin differently when you know that the creator of the plane created you. When you know the person who's the being holding the plane in the air cares that much about you to create a tube for you to be that can fly from one end of the country to the other end of the country and get you there safely. But when, to your point, you carry too much baggage, you know what our baggage is? Regret. It's trauma. It is hurt. It is pain. Not that those aren't real experiences. I'll give you a real time example. I talked to someone earlier today, someone that I really respect and value. And she told me that she found out she was laid off today. Now, you know how I feel about a layoff situation. I feel like the layoff is a setup for what God has for you. Right? Again, my decisions are informed and perspective is informed by my experience. And for her, it was hurtful. It was disappointing. It was not a surprise, but a surprise, which means you had some kind of clue that this could happen, right? God gave you some unction, some intuition to let you know what might happen,
Mm-hmm.
right? When I was talking to her, um, I just reminded her that, I never said I'm sorry because I don't think God makes mistakes. You know
Right.
what I mean? This
Mm-hmm.
decision that was you were affected by was not in your power, but God is going to use it for your good to close one chapter and start another. And
Mm-hmm.
so my prayer for her to her was give yourself time to grieve this loss because losing a job, losing a relationship, different than
Right.
losing a person, but there's still a mourning process. And sometimes
Right.
we don't give ourselves grace and space to mourn, especially as men, to
Mm-hmm.
mourn something so that we can embrace the new thing that God has for us. Because if I'm operating, going back to trauma informed decisions from the hurt of that, I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
run to another bad situation. I'm going to run
Right.
to the first thing, not the God thing. Does that make
Right.
sense?
It makes 100% sense, and it's so accurate. And I'm so grateful that you're able to join me on this discussion. And I know that we've talked about like a lot of things, around decisions, how to make them, what not to make. But like I said, I try to like to give people practical things that they can apply or put in their tool belt. So when they leave this podcast, it's not motivation, right?
Right.
Motivation is cool, but motivation subsides.
That it
Like,
does.
what are some practical steps that you can apply on a daily basis that's going to help you make a better informed decisions, more intentional decisions to push you towards your goals, dreams, and aspirations. So I want to give you the opportunity, RJ, to maybe just give a few, maybe 3 high level points on how they can say, well, RJ, I want to make decisions, but I just don't know how to. Nobody's never taught
Mm.
me. I don't know what to do. Yeah, that's good for you, but for me, I just don't know. What do you say to that person?
Yeah, and I love the framing of the question because we tell people what to do all the time, but most
Mhm.
people know what to do, they just don't know how to do it.
Right.
So, how do I make better decisions? First and foremost, and obviously, if you're listening to this podcast, you are a man of faith. You are a
Mhm.
person of faith because this podcast it's reaching the world, right? So everyone that reaches us, this specific conversation needs to know first and foremost when you get that vertical alignment right, recognizing that God woke you up today,
Right.
that in and of itself lets you know that you are worthy and you are valuable. And so having that value, understanding of your value, second, then leads to informing that if I'm worthy, if I'm valuable just because of who I am, what decisions have I made that do not or have not reflected that value? Right? So get your vertical relationship right, understanding the value that you were created with, not that you have to earn, right? You earn income, you earn, right, a paycheck. Value you were born with
Hmm.
a relationship with God, understanding that I come from a place of value. And then what is the vision? So it's the 3 V's. Get your
Right.
vertical relationship right. Know
Right.
that you are made of value, in value, with value. And that once I establish a vision for my life, and I'm gonna give
Right.
you a framework for how to establish a vision really quickly. Because a lot of people ask this, I don't know my purpose, or how do
Hmm.
I figure out my purpose? And it's actually quite simple, not easy, but simple. Here's the simple way, and I'm going to give you the framework for creating a vision. So, my 3 point sermon: get your vertical right,
Hmm.
recognize that you have value and you add value to spaces, and I
Right.
guarantee you'll make better decisions, and
Uh-huh.
then have a vision for your life, right? What pains you is a part of your purpose. So, if
That's
you
right.
want to get closer to what I'm here for, what is the thing that hurts your heart when you read about it, when you see it, when you hear it, or even when you feel it? If you don't like people talking to you bad, that means that you may have a gift to help others understand the way that they talk to people has a negative impact. doesn't
Right.
make you
That's
anything
good.
other than gifted and emotionally intelligent,
That's
right?
good.
If it hurts you, if you see a child go without, maybe
Hmm.
God has given you a ministry, a nonprofit, a business that
Right.
enables children to not lack any good thing, right? Just like God
Right.
doesn't want us to lack any good thing, He gives us a vision and a pain that is associated with our purpose. This is what I want to give you. This is because CY is my guy. I want to give this to his community. There's a framework that I've designed that I've used and coached hundreds of people now on successfully of how to design a vision. Your vision should be biased. Biased. It
Okay.
should be bold. It should be inspiring. It should be aspirational,
Right.
meaning bigger than you and almost unachievable in your life, right?
Wow.
Lifetime. It should be specific,
Hmm.
right? What is it? Like going back to that pain and purpose, it has to connect to your purpose. It should be exciting. Man, I get up every single day and I get to work towards this. I get to build this. I get to do this, even if it's in everyday interactions until you get the experience, education, and exposure to build it into something that's a business or whatever it's meant to be. And last but not least, it should demand your attention. It should demand your time. It should demand that you make decisions and choices that are aligned with this vision and not just aligned with how I feel.
Wow. That is dope. Be biased. The three
That's right.
V's, right? And then be biased. So if you don't have your notes, you need to come back and you need to rewind the podcast and get your notes, right? The three V's is the vertical, right?
Yep.
It's
Value.
the value, and then it's the vision,
Vision. That's
and
right.
then it's bias. So you need to write those things down. That is good, and that's what I'm talking about. Those are actionable steps. Like that gets you started. Now you have framework for where to go. And I just want to add a couple things on to what RJ said, and as we're getting ready to close out the Genesis Renaissance of Manhood podcast. So for my fellas and anybody that's listening to this podcast, the thing about value is the value is in the eye of the beholder. So if you don't value yourself, no one else will value you. And so if you struggle with valuing yourself, remember that you are fearfully and wonderfully made.
Mhm.
Remember that you are the head and not the tail. You are a lender and not the borrower. You are more than a conqueror through Christ Jesus. There's so many affirmations within the Bible, which is a book of principles, that if you apply those principles in your daily life, you can't help but to win. I would almost put money up if you follow the principles of the word, you are going to win.
That's a guaranteed
It's
win. You don't
guaranteed. There's
even
no
not even
ifs, ands,
try.
or buts.
It's a guaranteed win.
Exactly. As I remember that one cook said, I guarantee.
I guarantee.
Yeah, I can't remember his name, but I remember that he had the glasses, the older white guy. He had that Cajun accent, and he said, I guarantee. And then the other thing for you is, I'm going to say, find your sweet spot.
Mm.
So that's where talent, passion, and value intersect. And in the middle of all those is your sweet spot. So draw a circle of your talent, draw another close circle of your value, draw another close circle of your passion, and
Mm.
draw a circle in between all those circles and put your sweet spot. So where all those interconnect, that's where you need to be. And that's where how you need to base the choices that you make on your life. That's what I've done for myself. It's been applicable to my life. And over the past 2 years, the growth has been phenomenal. And then the last thing I'm going to say is just be disciplined.
Mm-hmm.
Like you should know what you're going to do every day when you get up. Get you a to-do list, get you a book. I got a book that I write in. Here it is right here. It has all my to-dos. I cross them out. What I don't get done, I move to the next day. Like you should not get up exactly. Right.
A
Where
list.
that's intentionality. So where intentionality flows,
Energy.
results go.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. You have the expectation plus execution equals efficacy.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't expect if you don't execute. If you don't execute, there's nothing. It's just a wish.
Mm-hmm.
But you must execute in everything that you do. Be intentional about what you do. Time is of the essence. We all do not have as much time as we think. And I say this all the time. The graveyard is the richest place on the earth. Unfulfilled dreams, unwritten books, unwritten multi-platinum albums, billion-dollar businesses, all are just laying there. It's like a ship that sank at sea and they'll never be recovered. So that's what I will leave you in closing is the 3 V's. Be biased. Remember that value is in the eye of the beholder. You must value yourself before anybody else values you. So if you think that you're a $18 an hour person, that's exactly what you'll get, $18 an hour. But if you believe that you are a multimillionaire or a decamillionaire, like there's nothing wrong with thinking big. Like you have
Life,
to give God something to shoot for, right?
yeah, I love that. I know. Just real quick, life meets you at the point of your belief and expectation, and some of the cr- most. What does it say? There's a thin line between genius and insanity, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
You got to be insane to believe that you were born to be something more than where you come from, right? So I just wanted to tie that back to what you were saying,
No,
right?
that's dope. I mean, because think about that. How many inventions are made that people thought those people were crazy when they started
Exactly.
talking about it?
So whatever you were thinking, that idea is not crazy. It's God given, but you got to cultivate it, right? Through those 3 V's, right? Get the vertical, identify your value, as CY just reinforced, and get your vision clear because no billion-dollar anything becomes more than a dollar something without a clear vision.
Wow. And in closing, we're going to close with that statement from my buddy, my guy, my brother, my friend. You know, I consider him to be one of my best friends in the world, and that is no cap. Very phenomenal orator, communicator, intelligent trainer, DE&I practitioner. So in closing, RJ, I want you to tell the people where they can find you, how they can follow you, what you have coming up.
Thank you again. Great discussion, great dialogue, man. I knew this was going to be nothing less than amazing. Again, I'm Robert H. Johnson Jr. You can find me on LinkedIn, Robert H. Johnson Jr. I'm also on Instagram. I am the corporate dropout. Again, I am the corporate dropout on Instagram, Robert H. Johnson Jr. on LinkedIn. And I'm just super excited that this year is off to an amazing start. I have a book that I'm working on. And that's another thing, right? Me and my bro, we hold each other, lift each other up and hold each other accountable for the God-given visions, right? And because you make a decision to do the thing that God has given you. So I appreciate your support, for me, CY, as I've been, on this journey. And we have the Panoramic Experience 2024 that's going to be in Atlanta mid-September. Stay tuned for more details on that, which Carlton, you were a huge hit and made an amazing impact at the experience last year. So looking forward to an amazing year. So I just have so many aspirations, but the biggest thing that I'm super excited about is God's will unfolding bigger than anything I can even imagine for myself.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So real quick, I don't want to prolong the time. We're going to have to definitely bring you back for the panoramic experience. We're going to, jump off into that, get deeper, your reasoning behind it, why you're doing it, and just let people know, like, I remember when you birthed a vision several years ago and you talked about it, and to watch you, they say an elephant carries a baby elephant for 2 years. Right, some visions take a little longer to birth because they're so massive. Like an elephant is massive, so it takes longer to birth an elephant versus a chicken or a rabbit. Right, that's only a shorter incubation period. So we're gonna get back and talk about that. And there might be somebody that's aspiring to do their own conference in whatever space they're in. So we definitely want to bring you back and talk about that. But real quick, explain the methodology behind the corporate dropout.
Yeah, that's a good question. So when I left corporate America in 2017 officially, because I really feel like I retired in 2017. See, well, I was telling somebody this the other day because I'm no longer loyal to an organization as an employee. And that
Mhm.
doesn't mean that I don't give 100% to what I do. It just means that I got so much out of the corporate experience that God gave me the vision to begin deploying that into the lives of others and with other organizations. And so when I left corporate America, someone had actually said it. I got to be honest. We were in some meeting as I was getting ready to leave, and somebody said, "Yeah, like you ought to be a corporate dropout." I said, "I certainly am, and if you don't do anything with that phraseology, my friend, I will do something with it." And I did something with it. I lived it. It's a lifestyle for me. I teach people how to do it right. Like I consult, I mentor people that want to make the leap from corporate America to entrepreneurship. That's another conversation I'm sure we'll have one day. But you want to do it when you got that vertical, that you know your value, and you have clear vision. You can birth an elephant because you will have the patience to know that this thing, right, is going to only get better, healthier, and be ready for delivery over time. And so the corporate dropout is a mindset. I own my talents. I operate in corporate spaces as a CEO does. I make decisions as if I were because I am the CEO of YOU or ME, or however you want to say that.
Right.
But it's just about this conversation. It's actually rooted in this conversation, is knowing that I get to make a choice. I'm not enslaved to any job. What
Right.
I am a slave to is my purpose. And I will not, to your point earlier, I will not die full. I will not leave this earth. And even if God, whatever God's plan is, that was tomorrow, I will have left this earth having fulfilled vision, having impacted lives. And I want that for every one of you listening today. When God gives you an idea, not everything is to be acted upon in that moment. Some things have to be processed so that you can develop the vision, so that you can attract the people. 'Cause remember, vision comes to life when you have a team. I had a team of people that God brought into my life last year to bring the panoramic to life, right? Make the choice that you are worthy because God created you in his image to live the most amazing life that is rooted in purpose. And the corporate dropout for me was the moment, the catalyst, the pivot to now living the most impactful life that I probably did the previous 20 years.
Wow. We appreciate you for coming on, RJ. We're going to drop all his information below the podcast thread. You'll be able to find him for coaching opportunities, book him to speak in, to learn more about the I Am Corporate Dropout. Of course, this is your boy CY, Mr. 8020 8020. You can find me at carlton-young.com. You can find me on the Genesis podcast, this podcast right here. You can find me on the Elevated Mindset podcast with my co-host, Kevon Empowers. You can find me on Instagram at I am 8020 Nation. And you can follow me on YouTube at I am 8020 Nation as well. We appreciate you for tuning in. We hope something that was said that changed your perspective on life. And in closing, in order to be, you have to become. So that thing that you want to be, you must become. You must first be it first, and then you get it. If you don't get that, think about it and you'll get it. Until next time, episode 2 is over. We're signing out. We appreciate you. We love you. Godspeed. And we're going.
You can count your problems and not your blessings.
Carlton Young.
Give it to God and he just might stretch it. That's a valuable lesson. Who is he?